Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Boundary Breakers. If you can believe it, this is our 16th episode. Who would have thought? Today, we are here with the lovely Dr. Dana Sinclair, and we're going to learn a little bit about how to break pressures and to master performance under pressure with someone who's a specialist at it. So, Dr. Dana, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself so we could get into today's conversation?
Absolutely, Piper. Yes, I am a performance psychologist, which means I work with a lot of athletes, professional athletes, actors, students, business executives,
Yeah.
surgeons, anybody who is performing, which basically means all of us because everybody has to perform.
Yeah.
What I do is I help people learn to control their emotions under pressure. Because everybody's got a pressure moment, no matter what you do or who you are.
Yeah. And how do you define what pressure is? What is this sense that all of us are experiencing when we're going into performance?
Well, it differs for everybody, but everybody has those moments where it's really meaningful to
Mhm.
do a good job, or they want something or need something, and they might be worried that they can't pull it off, or they think they're fine, and all of a sudden they're not performing as they usually are.
Yeah.
So it's about pre-planning and learning what might get in your way, what those hot spots or distractions are, and planning a way around them so that you're getting more out of yourself every time you're out there.
Okay, I'm understanding what you're saying. So it's a bit of thinking ahead and planning ahead and knowing how you might react to something and then combating that.
Yes, exactly. So it could be for some people, it's an interview, going into an interview situation. I mean, you were a dancer, right? So there would have been certain performances, perhaps, that you were a little bit more tense than others. You might have been excited, but some might have been bigger and more meaningful. And that's when the tension rises, and people might not quite get to their best if they haven't thought it through. So it could be any kind of sporting event. It could be an exam. It could be anything that you face daily. It could be dealing with your boss, asking for a promotion, confrontation, somebody who's defensive.
Hmm.
We all face it all the time.
Yeah. And for me, I feel that pressure more so when it's high stakes. So when I feel like there isn't as much of a risk in what I'm doing, it doesn't really matter as much. So I don't feel as much pressure.
Absolutely. So again, it's usually something that when it is really meaningful to you, you really want it or you need it. That's
Hmm.
when we can sometimes falter a little bit or trip up a little bit. And we all think about results.
Hmm.
We all want results. We all want to be good at what we do, but getting to your best in those moments can be a little tricky.
Yeah. Completely. And, I feel like this is completely relative to the book that you've been working on and promoting, that people are able to go out and read. So, can you tell us a little bit about Dialed In and how to do your best when it matters the most?
I sure can. It is basically, I wanted to write it because I've been working for 20 years in this zone, again, with a lot of professional athletes and actors and business people. And what I learned is that, no matter who you are, there is a way to get to your best. And people like to complicate how they approach things,
Yeah.
or they just like to walk in and hope that the best happens. And I sort of figured out with my clients that there is a way to do this. There is a structure, there is a framework, and I want everybody to be able to have it, because who likes to walk into a situation and think, oh no, this is going to be terrible, and then lose your focus in the moment?
Yeah.
It is no fun. And the book is sort of broken down into a couple of sections. First section is on myth busting. There's a lot of, I think, rhetoric out there around performance and the psychology of performance, that you need to be confident, or you need to be motivated, or there should be no fear. You need to trust yourself. And I like to sort of break a few of those down, bust a few of those, so that people don't have to wander around thinking, if I'm not confident, I'm never going to be able to do it. Sure, you can. Confident, it's overrated, things like that. Second section is then just gets down to the sort of brass tacks of, how do I actually do this? How do I go into an interview and get the most out of myself instead
Yeah.
of freaking out
Hmm.
and thinking, okay, that was terrible. So I show people how to do that in the book.
Okay. And what made you want to put this into a book rather than having like a series of, um, talks online or starting a foundation? Like, what about a book made you feel like this is the best way to go about getting the information out there?
That's a pretty good question. I have done research on my life. I mean, I've been worked in psychiatry, I've worked in sports psychology, I have written a couple of dissertations in my time. I've published articles. So writing is something that I think is easily accessible and it's fun for me. And I found that with my clients too, giving them a little bit of reading here and there helps them make it come to life because they can go away, read in the safety of their own space,
Yeah.
through what might be scaring them or what might be worrying them. So, I mean, I think a book is probably the easiest way that people can take the information and make it their own.
Yeah. Interpretation is totally key there.
Yeah.
And if I read a section, the person next to me read the exact same section, we would completely interpret it different ways and see how it relates to our own life in
Yes.
completely different lights.
Yeah, and that was sort of the trick, I think, in terms of trying to write this is, okay, how do I make this digestible for anybody? Because we're all different. We all have different personalities, different performance styles, different strengths, different weaknesses. And I needed to take a bit of time to be able to put it in a format where anybody could pick it up and make it theirs. Otherwise, what's the point? You've got to sort of democratize this stuff.
Yeah. I also feel like a book is able to adapt to many different schedules, where if you were teaching a class, that would have to be at a specific time or you have a specific meeting place or something like that, where a book is completely adaptable to everyone's lifestyles.
Absolutely. It can be transformative for anybody anywhere. And I think that was the idea too, is I wanted to write about my clients and I
Hmm.
want to write about their stories and how they adjusted along the way. So I used a variety of people from a variety of backgrounds so that, hopefully it would be easy reading and applicable to anybody. Certainly different. Anybody can find something in here that relates to themselves.
Yeah, I really like that. And there you were discussing earlier the difference between performance and confidence and how confidence doesn't really matter in this grand scheme of just doing it. So what do you really mean by that and why can we throw confidence out the window?
Well, I do throw it out the window, but I bring it back a little bit because it's always nice to feel confident because that helps you relax and getting that tension down is key. But I do always say, I mean, everybody wants to talk about confidence, whether you're at a dinner party or in your job, talking casually or formally, everybody thinks everything is so set on confidence and say these Olympic champions have this unshakable confidence, and they don't. They have to work on it too. So I like to say it is, you know, not necessary because really in the moment you have to get away from your feelings and get down to what you have to do in the moment. It's all about being able to stay calmer and more focused in the moment. So I'll tell you, I had a American Idol contestant as a client, and she made it through, Hollywood week. She got through her first audition, and I thought she was going to be super excited when we spoke. But she was actually freaking out on the phone. I'm thinking, what is wrong? You just got by Lionel Richie and Katy Perry, and oh my goodness. And she was saying, I'm not going to be able to do it anymore. I'm not confident enough. Everybody's way more confident than me, et cetera, et cetera. I managed to stop her and say, hey, didn't you just do it? What are you talking about? You didn't have any confidence. Okay, but you just did it.
Yeah.
How did you do that? Oh, well, I do have a really good voice. And I just had to pay attention to that in the moment. I'm like, okay, so you might want to feel confident, but you actually don't need it. You've got to be able to get to what you do in the moment, because talent isn't the thing that ensures your success. It's your mental approach to it. She had all the talent. You just have to be able to get to it when you're scared and when
Hmm.
you're tense. And that applies to everybody.
And I feel like that is um so significant because a lot of people will choke, whether it is, giving a presentation at school and you can't really get that voice up. How do you turn off those emotions that cause you to choke when you have the skill or you prepared and you're organized?
There are a number of skills, but the number one thing for anybody out there, if you want to be better in the moment, you have got to check your tension. You've got to calm down. You've got to be able to calm down in seconds. And if you think about this ahead of time and learn how to do it quickly, you're in business.
Hmm.
So, do you want to talk about how to do it or save that
Let's
for
talk about how to do it.
later? All right. So, think about your best performances. Where's your tension? Everybody check your tension on a scale of 1 to 10. Where are you at? How tense are you? How calm are you? Are you at the low end? 1 to 2, calm, loose, ready to go? Or boom, are you up at 9, 10, tight, uncomfortable, nervous? So usually when you're good, you're going to be at, 3, 4, everything's rolling. You can think, like you're calm enough so that you can think.
Yeah.
Once it gets up to 5, okay, 5 and under, I'm okay. Over 5, we better watch it because that's when the tension is up. Your body gets tight,
Yeah.
your heart rate goes up, your thinking gets cluttered. There's a lot of noise up there. That's the first thing that gets in the way of your skills. So it sounds goofy, but breathing is the best way to get your tension down quickly.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you did this with dance or whatnot, but the easiest way is really just think about slowing it down, getting your shoulders out of your ears,
Hmm.
right? And exhaling, just exhaling a little bit longer. I
Yeah.
love it when people breathe in through their nose, out through their nose, but if you can't, when you're breathing out of your mouth, make sure it's like you're breathing out of a straw, because it slows you down. And then you can remember, oh yeah, come on, actually, I did prepare for this. I can do this. What am I supposed to be saying again? And you can shift your focus. It's all
Yeah.
shifting your focus onto what to do in the moment. So you've got to be able to shift when you drift, because you're going to drift back into all that nonsense.
Yeah.
Calm down so you can shift on over to what to do in the moment. Number
Yeah.
one skill.
I like that. And breathing is such a commonly used practice in so many different cultures and religions and whatnot. But I feel like we still don't take advantage of the benefits that it could have. I know I don't. Even doing that as you were explaining it, I'm already, a little bit more zen.
Well, see, the whole thing is we kind of know it, but the trick is, do we do it?
Yeah.
It's the reminders that we must give ourselves to be able to do it. And
Hmm.
if you just walk into an event or a performance and you haven't sort of thought it through, you may do it, you may not.
Hmm.
But if you remind yourself, okay, and you know how to take a slow, quick breath out and drop those shoulders and remind yourself in the moment when everything's happening, you can pull it together quickly or keep it going smoothly.
Yeah, I like that. So how did you realize uh the benefits of just taking a moment to slow down? Is it a personal experience or through your research, or how'd you really find out that it had some merit to it?
Kind of a combination of all of that. But I tried it.
Mm.
I've been in situations too where I've been too tense
Hmm.
and forgetting what I'm doing. I do remember walking into I guess a board meeting. I was trying to get some funding to finish my second PhD, and it's expensive. And I
Yeah.
didn't have any money, of course, poor student. And
Hmm.
this meeting was very important to me because it meant staying in school. And
Hmm.
I was over in England at Cambridge and, staying there or having to figure out what I was going to do with my life.
Yeah.
So I really needed this funding. so I hadn't really, I prepared what I was supposed to say about my research and proposal and all that, but I hadn't thought any further about it. I walked in, this is many, many years ago. I walked in thinking there'd be two people in there to talk to. There was a big, huge boardroom of a dozen people. I nearly
Yeah.
fell. I just, my head exploded. I couldn't think. My tension went through the roof.
Yeah.
I thought, oh my gosh, am I ever in trouble? So, I mean, I managed to make it through, got the funding and all that, but oh, it was not pretty. And
Yeah.
halfway through, I realized I just have to calm down here, get my shoulders down, just, breathe a little bit, do your best and get out of there.
Yeah.
So, we've all had those kinds of experiences, and I've sort of worked on that over the years, and I found it actually really works. I've got many athletes who I shove breathing at.
Yeah.
And I get messages from NFL linemen and quarterbacks saying, oh my gosh, the breathing thing saved me. So if it works for them, I figure it can work for anybody. Impression.
Completely. And I liked what you said about how we've all been in that situation and, you're kind of the expert on this kind of thing and you still, have to fight those like feelings of pressure. So I feel like that relatedness, the fact that we can all, you know, agree that we have been in this type of situation before, helps create a better understanding. And, sometimes it's really hard to be understanding that's something that we all just have to work on. But the fact that that's an unescapable thing that we have to combat in our lives, it's kind of significant.
Absolutely. And who isn't going to benefit from knowing how to soothe themselves when they're worked up, worried, self-critical, negative,
Yeah.
scared, all of that?
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of people will say, oh, I don't get scared. Well, as I say, maybe it's a different word you want to use, but everybody gets tense,
Mm-hmm.
and it can trip them up. So knowing how to navigate and get around it is a super skill to have.
Completely. So, uh, that super skill, what advice do you have for individuals who struggle in these situations other than breathing? How do you get them to, bring it back?
So there is a structure, and it's a three-step process that I like, that my clients and I've sort of fine-tuned over the years. Step one, you've got to figure out what gets in the way. What are your hot spots? What are the distractions? What bugs you? What worries you? What frustrates you? You've got to figure those things out. Then you've got to grab some skills that we'll talk about and some of the strategies. Then you've got to make a plan. So those are the three steps. So 3 steps, 4 skills. What I mean by in that first step is, what are your hotspots? Okay. We're all bothered by certain things. So I usually, if people really tend to know what does get in their way, but
Mm-hmm.
for those that don't or are scared to look at it, I give them a list. So again, on that list, it's like 20 things long. Uh,
Okay.
it could be, as I say, everybody has to check off results. Oh, when I jump ahead, get into the future and think, oh, how am I doing? This is going to be terrible. What's going to happen? Okay, because that takes your mind off of the moment. So results, your expectations, whether they're realistic or not, worrying
Yeah.
about what other people think,
Mm-hmm.
being negative, like negative self-talk,
Yeah.
self-critical, fearing failure, uh, sabotaging yourself when you know you're going to back off and quit because
Yeah.
you're it could be when you're frustrated or angry, worried. Maybe it could be specific things like at your job. Gosh, you don't delegate, and then you don't get people to do what you need them to do. Maybe when you get defensive, maybe when you procrastinate, you know that that's going to cause a problem. So you see, there's all sorts of things that can get in your way.
Yeah.
And the good thing is to sort of write them down
Mm-hmm.
and then pick out your sort of your super derailers, the 2, 3, 4 things that really bug you. Then, okay, then you can move on to what you're going to do about it. So, for example, I mean, there's lots of sports examples, but say it's an interview, you've got to go for an interview. And have this one client who was really having trouble getting through an interview because she'd get tense,
Mm-hmm.
tension would shoot through the roof, and then she felt like she was a deer in the headlights, and she just would start to ramble. She wasn't listening to what the interviewers were asking her, so she was just sort of on her own,
Yeah.
and just then starting to think, oh man, this is terrible. I just need to get out of here. And she just curtail what she was saying and get off. No wonder she wasn't getting a job. So
Yeah.
she figured out, okay, when I start to ramble, when my tension goes up, because I stop listening and I start to think I can't do this. Okay, those are the things that got in her way. So
Mm-hmm.
that's step one. Then we could move on to step two to figure out what the strategies were.
Okay.
So breathing for one, getting that tension down so she could think.
Yep.
Then there's three other skills. There's self-talk, that's
Mm-hmm.
comprised of two things. There are figuring out what your performance cues are, what you should be actually doing, and
Okay.
then uh, daydreaming a little before you get into that next interview. Practice in your head, see it unfold as you wish, or at least better.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so those are sort of the other skills besides breathing that people need to be aware of.
Yep. I like how personal your approach to combating this issue is because I like that you had people set up their own greatest fears or their expectations because people are going to be afraid of different things and they're going to be expecting different things from whatever they are going into. So like for example, if I was more so afraid of what people were going to think, that's a completely different way to go about it than if I'm afraid that I don't know, that I'm not going to be able to answer questions well in an interview. Um, and that's something that, will stop a lot of people from, going forward and trying new things and risking stuff. Um, So I feel like to give people an opportunity to make it personal is going to be, more relative to people's lives rather than just having a completely laid out, you know, order of how things need to go.
Yeah, because it's very difficult to do that. Like you can have a framework and different pieces to fit in and show people, as they say in the structure, how to do it. But my philosophy is I want people to be able to coach themselves. I want them to be independent, self-directed performers. They've got to go live. They've got to deal with any kind of emotional, fallout.
Mm-hmm.
They need to sort of think through what their best approach is with some guidance, of course. But they need to be able to do it themselves. They can't be dependent on, somebody like me 24/7. It's their gig, it's their game. They've got to be able to do it. I just want to sort of show them how to coach themselves and then have them go off and do it
Yeah.
and just on their own. And, as I said before, we do make it complicated on ourselves, and there's a lot of self-protection, self-sabotage that goes on, which
Mm-hmm.
keeps people from being their best, right?
Yeah.
So,
And oh, sorry, you
no,
go.
no,
There's
go on.
always the lag. Um, So yeah, just what I want to say about that is that, at the end of the day, we have ourselves to live with, everything else falls away, like you are left with yourself. So if you need someone else to always be there to be able to help you get through the moment, that's just unrealistic because you're going to be alone. We come into the world alone, we die alone. So I like the idea of giving people the tools to coach themselves and provide the support in getting them to that place.
We all gotta make our way, and there's a lot of excuses that can come bubbling up when we feel like we're coming up against our own limitations. As you said before, when you're not stressed, you're not worried, it's easy to roll through things and be your usual great self, right? But other times it's not so easy. So having a good, honest think about yourself and knowing what stops you is a way to feeling better about yourself. And when you are feeling like you're performing at your best, or even just you're good, you're getting a lot out of yourself, it's great for your mental health. If you know you're making excuses or you're not performing as you could, even in low level things, it's frustrating, it's upsetting, it's annoying. People like to push out and blame other things and why they can't do it. It's not their fault, etc. I do push people gently,
Yeah.
but to face their own fears and to see if they're making excuses, because often they're not that hard to get over. We're just protecting ourselves and walking away from it, avoiding it, as opposed to if we really look at what could be in the way and having a plan around it, you get the results and the satisfaction that comes with it. Hey, what's better for your mental health than that?
Mm.
Not much. You're feeling good about yourself, off you go. That's what I say.
Very true. And, we do make excuses, even when we don't realize it. Just to throw the blame onto something else makes it easier than, facing the situation that's actually in front of you. So, what are some examples of these excuses that you come into when you're working with your clients and whatnot?
Oh, it could be anything. Um, uh, no one told me that the weather wasn't good. I didn't sleep well
Yeah.
at all. He said something to me that wasn't very nice. I've never done it before because nobody's let me before. It could be anything.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of sort of the most recent excuse I got. I was talking to a swimmer
Okay.
and we were talking about some technical thing. Well, I can't do it. I said, well, are you physically unable to do it or not? Well, no, it's just, I've never done it before. It was just a simple thing. It's just she was so afraid to actually try this part of the technique, just a full rotation, that's all. Because really what happens is if I try it, if I execute properly, if swimming, say, if I get my, extension out front and I'm pulling water the right way, if I do that, I will go faster. But if I actually try it and I'm still not as good as I think I could be, that would be terrible. And it can't be me. It has to be something else. So I'm just not really going to do it the full way and say, well, I can't.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
People always need a bit of a barrier between them and the end result, just in case it doesn't go the way they want it to, because it can't be that they're not good enough. It has to be something else. When
Yeah.
really, if they just executed correctly, they'd be great. They'd be fine.
And it's just getting to that position of executing it correctly when you're battling, your own hay, when you're in your own way.
When your mind is in that hotspot zone, expectations, self-criticism, negative this and that, and we need to get you to shift. See, in that hotspot zones, you're all worried about how you feel. I feel this, I'm worried about that. Okay, that's not going to help you in the moment. When we shift over to what to do, oh, I just have to execute correctly,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's something physical or staying on topic in your presentation.
Mm-hmm.
You're usually great. You usually get the result you want, or you're better. That's all we're looking for. That's
Yeah.
all, just being a little bit better.
Yeah. And, going about being better, is it something you constantly have to be aware of, or is it just something that will gradually happen over time if you're trying to incorporate these skills into your life?
Oh, if you're incorporating these things, and it'll happen right away. People tend to think, oh yeah, okay, this sounds great, but it sounds like a lot of work, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't know if it's for me. Well, let me tell you, even just incorporating a little bit of thought into it, as in, hey, what gets in my way? Or maybe when I get tight here, if I just breathe a little bit and settle, sit back in my chair, talk to the interview, actually listen for a moment. Huh, I can do that. They're automatically better. So I like to caution people, don't think, that this is a big area where you're going to have to practice this for an hour every day.
Okay.
No, you do not. Like if you wanted to meditate for an hour every day, go for it. I'm not going to stop you. But what would be helpful is if you learned how to breathe quietly and quickly,
Yeah.
and remember to do it when you next get into a situation, you will find that it actually works and it didn't take much practice at all.
Yeah. And I think just keeping that conscious thought in your mind when you are getting into these situations is going to be more helpful than practicing it in meditation, because that's when you're going to need it. You're going to need it in those moments, spontaneous, right there. And you probably don't need it first thing in the morning unless you wake up like really stressed, when you go to your meditation, right?
Yeah. Hey, if you want to do it, great. If it makes you feel better, do it. All that personal practice is wonderful. But don't think that, oh yeah, okay, now she's telling me, all right, I've got to do this and that and this and that. Otherwise, it's not going to work. No, there's a lot of, some of these skills. It's a really quick way, wow, to get to where you want. Because as I'm talking about those pressure moments, areas where you maybe have some skills or kind of know what you're doing. It's not like, okay, I'm going to have to go and be play the piano on stage now. Well, none of this is going to help you then because I don't know how to play the piano. So
Yeah.
that's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Right? I'm talking about pressure moments that we know we have to face and that we can be a little bit better at.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, I'm not going to Wimbledon. I'm not playing tennis, but the people that do play, they can certainly get to their skills if they calm down, if they talk to themselves a certain way,
Yeah.
if they rehearse in their mind. Yeah, they're going to get better for sure.
Heck yeah. So we've talked about this personal aspect, how this is all going to be individual and completely, up to that certain person. So in your personal journey, um, I remember when we spoke before that you talked about how you were involved in sports when you were younger, um, and particularly field hockey, right?
I was on the national team for field hockey. Yeah.
Yeah. So did you use any of these techniques when you were on the national field hockey team,
Well, I
or?
did. I did,
Okay.
surprisingly, because people will use them naturally. It's just when you get a bit more formal about them or learn a little bit more, you can make them work for you better. So yeah, I did. Just naturally used a few of them. Certainly, sort of the imagery, the daydreaming, working through a solution to, a skill or a situation on the field. I
Yeah.
used that. I used the self-talk stuff,
Hmm.
which we haven't talked about yet. And I don't think I was very good at the breathing, but I should love
Okay.
it now. Yeah. And
Um,
you can coach other people to do this too. Parents, friends, teachers, whatever, coaches, that you can teach your staff, other people how to work through different situations. Doesn't have to just be you for yourself. I want young
completely.
kids to learn how to use this stuff.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that actually. So for the um younger audience, actually, where did I talk about that? How do you recommend younger people to, incorporate these skills when they don't really have as much experience as, you know, us adults in just life?
Well, see, that's why I want them to read about this stuff now
Hmm.
or have their teachers read the book and show them how to do it. So I was speaking to someone recently and they were teaching their 2-year-old how to breathe because
Okay.
2-year-old, and I thought it was the greatest story. Their 2-year-old was getting, frustrated and having a temper tantrum like adults do, right?
Yeah.
And the kid was acting out and grabbing things and throwing things, and the mom said, so and so, Sally, just
Yeah.
Please, come on now, breathe, breathe out. And she was showing the kid how to do it. And there's this little 2-year-old switching her focus. And then she, took a couple of big exhales and started laughing and was fine and got back to business. So
Yeah.
these, if you can teach a 2-year-old to change your physiology and your thought process that quickly, we see that it works. So for young
Yeah.
kids, I would love them to teach some of this stuff in school
Mm-hmm.
around exam time. Is a perfect
Yeah.
or testing time.
Mm-hmm. Which I can definitely relate to, being a university student and whatnot.
Right.
And I think this is a great segue to get into our self coaching segment. So I've prepared a couple little scenarios for us. And I
Okay.
want you to kind of go through um, you know, the techniques, the strategies, the skills, how to incorporate self-talk in, these type of situations.
Okay.
So I would like to start off, I looked into your book a bit, of course. Um, and you had a little excerpt right after your step into my office introduction. And it was about how your role as a performance psychologist is to get people to use their heads, to be better at what they do, and how to regulate the emotions that they're going through to execute well. And that is the issue, right? That we keep coming to how it's, you know, hard to perform your best when you are so in your head.
When you're
Um,
busy, when there's too much turbulence and noise, it's impossible.
mhm, completely. So I'd like to start off with a scenario about a parent handling their kid's performance. So, I grew up in dance, very competitive. The moms are super involved, probably more involved than they should be. So
Yes.
now you have your parent coming down on you, your coach, and you have to, you know, get over it and still perform well. So how would you, work with that kid, or how would you work with that parent, and kind of give us the rundown?
Okay, the first thing, and I tell this to parents all the time, is you've got to apply it to yourself first. That's why I say being able to coach others, but
Mm.
parents need to look at themselves because a lot of the parents, and it's funny that you mentioned dance
Yeah.
and, tennis parents, hockey, dads, all of that.
Yes.
There's a lot of vicarious living that parents do through their kids. And there's a lot of competitiveness within the parent ranks regarding their kids.
Hmm.
They're sort of their kids are an extension of them. And if their kids do well, it's sort of that, well, my kid's better than your kid, so that means I'm better than you type of thing.
Yeah.
And that's rampant and it is really destructive.
Hmm.
So I do like the parents to actually think about this themselves, about how they behave first.
Hmm.
So again, it all comes down to, okay, what situation is going to stress you? I'm thinking of a tennis situation too,
Okay.
where I hear parents swearing at kids, uh, the opponents of their own children. They're
Yeah.
swearing at them or yelling another kid down from the stands.
Hmm.
It's ridiculous. So those, like, all parents probably need to do a check and check in with themselves and say, hey, what do I do that might get in the way of my child's performance? And you have to talk to your kid
Yeah.
and say, is there anything you have to be open enough to be able to say, can I help you? How can I help you be better? So it's about asking your child what gets in the way, how can I help you, asking them about their own performance lives, what gets in your way, what's going to help you, etc., as opposed to constantly telling your child what they should do, what they shouldn't do, how they're going to get better. You've got to do this, you've got to practice, you've got all that is a pretty big mistake. You
Hmm.
should really have a conversation or a discussion and let your child have some input into their own performance lives, I say. And you need to back off a little bit and let your child run the show just a little bit more. Now, you need to guide them and support them and push them and challenge them, yes, but you want to nudge them, not shove them. So when you're dealing with your kid,
Hmm.
first things first, it's all about you being able to settle so that you're not putting extra pressure on your child.
Hmm.
Now, when you're dealing with your child, so let's pick an age. Give me an age, Piper. What
Uh,
age?
let's do 11.
11. Okay. Lots of 11-year-olds out there that are still just trying to have some fun and happy to be executing the way they can and doing their best. So as long as, you know, the mums and dads aren't putting pressure on, because I do see a lot of 11-year-olds in my practice too, and it's usually the parents getting in the way. But when it's not, the idea is for an 11-year-old, again, first thing, all right, how tense are you? How worked up are you? Are you nervous or are you not? If they're really nervous, we need to give them some skills to help soothe themselves. So get that tension down a little bit. Again, the breathing, easy breathing, just blow it out. Just you can play games with them, just get those shoulders down, blow it out of your mouth, and get really loose, like cooked spaghetti, not spaghetti in a box. Your body's got to be loose, like cooked spaghetti rolling around your plate, right?
Hmm.
That type of thing. Then you get them to pick out one or two things that they've got to actually do to perform well. And you're going to have to help me in dance.
Hmm.
Like say in tennis, it would be, what are the performance cues? What do you know if you do out there, you're going to be great. For tennis, it might be, all right, I've really got to move my feet, get to the ball, and then when I'm hitting it, I just have to finish my swing. Just not just a little jab, make it nice and long. As simple as that. In dance, I don't know what it might be, but it's
You know,
finishing a move.
yeah, having pointed toes,
There
smiling,
you go.
doing well.
There you go. Smile and pointed toes or whatever it is,
Hmm.
right? Okay. So those are performance cues. So that's the second most important skill. So the calming down a little bit, knowing what you have to actually do, two things that you know you have to stay focused on in the moment to make it work. Then we get into other things that you can use during your competition or before. But let's just talk about self-talk. And there's two parts to it. One, having a facts list, then we can get to smart talk. But having a facts list is a really good way to counteract all the sort of negative stuff that might fly into your head when you're tense and not thinking about it. So have a list of things that you've accomplished, that you have won, that you've done well at, whether it's coming second at something or winning a trophy or getting really good feedback from a coach or a teacher or having lots of friends at school or being a nice person, helping someone out in class. Have a list of those things that you've done that if you reviewed, oh, I've done some nice things. That's a good way to ground yourself. And it's funny, I was talking to um actually a world silver medalist the other day about this very same thing.
Okay.
I don't like that. I don't like facts. I don't like facts. It makes me uncomfortable. I said, okay,
Okay.
what would you do? And she said, well, I like to think about things that I've done that surprised me, that I actually was able to do that surprised me. I said, okay, have a surprise list then. Oh, okay. So, so she can get to the good things she's done without feeling awkward that way. But it's good to have that list because when you start to go negative and you look at the facts, you can't take the facts away from yourself. You kind
Yeah.
of did them. So, and they're good. So it's a nice substitution for all the made up negative junk that we throw in there too
Yeah.
much.
I like that.
So have your list and look at those often. Okay. Then the next part of your self-talk is smart talk. People get negative all the time and say stuff that is not true. I'm an idiot. That's never going to work, even though they've done it 100 times.
Yeah.
So if you do that, just take a moment to examine how you actually talk to yourself when you're stressed. Write them down and look at those. You look at there could be 10, whatever, and pick out the ones that really do bug you. Because a lot of times you might say, "Oh, that was so stupid. I'm so stupid." Does that really bug you? Maybe, but maybe not. If it doesn't bug you, go buy it. Pick out the ones that really are a problem, and let's look at it realistically and reframe that a little bit. I'm going to be terrible. I know that I'm going to lose this match. Well, maybe a better response is, well, I don't want to lose, and I sure will if I keep talking like this. So what I need to do is, you know, settle down a little bit and finish my shot. Come on, I can do it. That type of thing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the self-talk part of that. An 11-year-old can do that too, just as an adult can. Again, you have to take a moment to go through and actually write it down, pre-plan it. That way you can substitute it in when the time is right. If you don't pre-plan it like this, you'll just go back to your default and
Yeah.
go into, negative zone.
Yeah.
That last skill, the fourth skill, I say keep daydreaming.
Okay.
That's like visualization, imagery. It's getting a picture in your head of how you want it to go.
Hmm.
Practice it. Why keep a negative image in your head all the time? Because that's what you end up going to. If you change it over to how you've done it when you're good, or how you
Okay.
want to even further improve it, you've got a way better shot at dragging yourself in that direction.
Hmm.
So there's different things to daydream about, but that's the basic way. I want people to daydream. We do it all the time anyway. And people out there listening, if you're daydreaming, that's okay. Just, make sure you do it a bit more in a more focused way to help yourself.
Yeah. And I really like the way you kind of laid it out like a plan because when um you are, I don't know why, like the idea to my head came like robbing a bank. But they make a plan B. Like what happens in case of blank? And why don't we treat our lives the same? Why don't we think ahead and think of what could potentially happen and what ways we could help combat that? Because if you haven't thought about it, you're gonna have to get really good at, you know, freestyling, improvising. And that's just not something that everyone's good at.
No. And they're good when they're maybe not feeling pressure, but
Hmm.
not when they are feeling pressure.
Yeah.
So, improvising is great, but it's always nice to be a little prepared. It's like pilots have a checklist so they don't
Hmm.
make mistakes. And that's why I wanted to put sort of the planning part of this into just a really practical framework, an easy, adjustable way to do it because it's a hassle. No one
Yeah.
wants to think it through all the time and prepare ad nauseum because you're pretty good at it anyway. It's just you
Yeah.
want to be ready for anything that might throw you off so
Yeah.
that you can quickly pull it together and not be upset or annoyed or irritated after.
Yeah, completely. And you're completely right. Even pilots, when they do, the same kind of procedure, they do have a checklist so that, they make sure that they haven't forgotten anything. Or if their head is somewhere else, they've got something to go back on. Doctors have the same thing. Like I'm sure you've heard of um like items being left in people's bodies after surgery and stuff. That's now on their checklist. Like, make sure you recount all the items after they've come out of the body. Make sure they match up to the count we did earlier.
Yes. And surgeons, even though they're very good, obviously, and skilled, they still need to watch their performance cues and whatnot too, so that they can go in less stressed, better prepared, perform well.
Yeah.
So, I still do research with, university, U of T, about teaching surgical residents, um, in terms of how to use their heads better. So one of the studies we did, is looking at getting the surgical residents to prepare their usual preparation technically and all of that, but also to add in some imagery practice, some mental practice. And it turned out that the group that did get educated and do the mental practice, the daydreaming, focused daydreaming, they were less stressed,
Yeah.
they performed better
Mm-hmm.
the surgical outcomes. So
Hey, the proof is in the pudding right there. And you don't just go into an essay and you start writing it all. You have to plan it. You have to look into what scholars you're gonna look into. You have to think of your topics, and then you go from there. So that's just statistical that it works and it's gonna help.
I was talking to Billie Jean King, and she said about, say, daydreaming, especially. She used to do it all the time. She would make things up, scenarios in her mind, and correct them, even if it was impossible. She would make something up and work it through. She did pretty well.
Heck yeah.
Still doing pretty well.
And why not? Why not? Like, if you're gonna be going about something, why not think about it first? Think about all the amazing things that could happen. Think about the terrible things that could happen. Use your brain. That's something that humans are so you know blessed to have. An ability to think.
Have a path around a potential problem that you know is likely to pop up.
Yeah. I'd like to extend the opportunity for everyone in the crowd to, prepare your questions that you have, and give us a little back and forth advice sharing type of section. And in the meantime, I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about what it means to be an athlete or a performer day to day. So, things get routine. You go to your practice, you perform, whatever. What do you think keeps a healthy mind for an athlete when they have so much going on in their lives?
Nice question. Athletes are just the same as anybody else
Mm-hmm.
because everybody's got everything going on. And again, if you are, say, if you're going to practice all the time. In fact, I did speak with someone again recently about this. Practice was always great.
Mm-hmm.
Racing ahead, 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 gets to competition, way behind.
Yeah.
It really becoming a problem, like a mental health problem. What's wrong? Why can't I do this? It's very difficult.
Yeah.
So again, I'm coming back to the structure,
Mm-hmm.
learning to approach, say, competition or the pressure moments the same do your regular moments is key. If there's a big
Okay.
difference between practice and training or, rehearsal and the performance, don't despair. There's a way to do this. It's
Okay.
a very natural, normal thing to get hit in the moment with tension, worries, all of that. There's a way by it. And that's what I'm talking about. The structure is that 3-step process that's fast and easy and applied to you. So I encourage people to do this, to think about it ahead of time. But
Yeah.
say with athletes, on their day to day, they're the same as the rest of us.
Mm-hmm.
They just happen to be really good at something,
Yeah.
right? Other people are really good at other things.
Yeah.
And it's just knowing how to settle, get to your skill set in the moment when you really want it or need it.
Okay.
That's it.
I want to know what your eureka moment was, in going through this career pathway. What really lit the bulb for you and was like, this is something that I want to do, and I think that other people would benefit from this?
Well, one thing that is in more recent time was when I figured out, oh, this isn't just a random thing that you can only apply to each person individually. There's a generalized process to this. That's theory, that's research. That's why it's so, I guess, useful or exciting is the stuff that I'm doing is theory driven. It's cognitive
Okay.
behavioral therapy principles applied to performance. And what got me excited about it all was when I realized, oh yeah, it's research, it's theory. I can apply this to anybody, anywhere, doing anything.
Mm.
Now I've got to figure out how to do that, but we can all use this. It's not just, say, in my private practice, okay, I have to approach everybody differently every single time. I mean, I do in terms of their performance style, but everybody can do this with a particular structure. We just have to customize the structure for everybody.
And that customization is where you're going to find the match for you. We got a great question.
Yourself.
Yeah, completely. We got a great question in the crowd. How do you mentally present in the moment, whether it's a normal moment or a high stakes one?
How do I, or how does one?
Let's
How
let's
does
just do
one
how does one because you've
Yeah,
got more backing on it.
right. How does one present themselves mentally? Well, first of all, think about how you would like to. Don't just let it happen. You got to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
So think about the moment that you're talking about. How would I like to present?
Mm.
Calmer, more composed, more energetic, more social?
Okay.
Think about that first. Then the next step is, okay, what are those skills that I have to use? Do I have to talk more? Do I have to sit back and
Mm-hmm.
listen more? Do I have to slow down a little? Do I just have to sort of take some initiative and ask? That's it.
I like that. That really clicked something for me.
Okay. Yeah, there's some difference makers, there's some skills that are difference makers for people. Slowing down, listening longer, checking in on how you did last time. Don't just run away from your last performance. Think about, hey, how did I do? What did I do well? What didn't go so well? What am I going to adjust?
Mm-hmm. And I feel like this directly goes along with the story that you mentioned earlier about the girl that rambled during interviews and whatnot, and the power of silence. That is something that, people like to fill. And if you are in an interview, leaving that silence will often allow the other person to get deeper into what you're talking about. And I think that is a skill that more people could benefit from
Yeah.
because it's going to engage the other person.
Well, it's so true because we all know those non-natural listeners
Mm-hmm.
will just keep talking over you, won't listen, they interrupt, they wait for a millisecond break in you breathing for them to jump right back in and keep rolling as to what they were saying. That's not good for communication because you never hear what the other person is saying. And,
Yeah.
a lot of people need to just talk less, be
Yeah.
quiet more, hear what the other guy's saying so that you can interpret them the way they meant to be interpreted instead of just making a bunch of assumptions.
Yeah.
Super, super important skill. You're right.
Yeah. I think I need to practice that one more for sure. I'll definitely need to work on that. And you're right. Just trying to hear something from the position of where they are saying it rather than my immediate thoughts when someone says something. I've caught myself in that situation many times. So I could definitely work on that skill.
A lot of people are fast paced, fast thinkers, always on the go, always moving. So they react quickly and they say immediately, and sometimes they get it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Or yeah, and they sometimes have to walk it back too. So taking a taking a breath, taking a 5-second break to let it sink in is a good idea.
And that's what I just did there. I
You
let
did a
it
good job.
I let it sink in, trying to stay active in my mind. Okay, we got another great one in the chat. So after listening to your strategies and plans and your skills that are useful to, help in these type scenarios, how do you plan to reach audiences that don't have traditional access to performance psychology or even really don't know anything about it.
That's right. A lot of people don't know anything about it. My job is a little bit under the radar,
Mhm.
right? Working with all these different sort of specialty groups, or although I do work with a lot of students and anybody who might be feeling tension. Uh, that's why I thought a book would be a good idea.
Mhm.
As I say, everybody should have access to this because it is something we should be learning in schools,
Yeah.
right? What kid wouldn't do a better job at home or at school if they knew how to regulate, soothe themselves, listen, settle, right? So I am trying to figure out a different way to do that because I'm pretty keen on everybody having some of these basic skills.
Mhm.
Started with the book.
Yeah.
I've got to figure this social media stuff out, you know?
Well, that's what the kids are all on these
I
days.
know.
Yeah. And I feel like social media, it can be used as a tool and it can be used, as an inhibitor, and you have to just navigate it as best as you can. It's such a wide, you know, surplus of information at all times. And emotions are big and loud, and there are people that put all their emotions onto the internet, and people are easily influenced and impacted by what they see online. Um, so I feel like it's just we have to try to implement and get the word out there that there are ways for us to work against these emotions and to better ourselves in doing so. So I
And
think that
it's
making
that hard.
use, yeah, completely, and making use of social media and putting a different perspective out there could be totally useful.
I agree. And, I'm doing more speaking and, going to try to make sure that when it is sort of an informative chat, talk, it gets on YouTube, it's accessible, it's on Instagram. Because again, it takes courage to try to be good and
Mm-hmm.
to move past what you typically do when you're under pressure.
Yeah.
And I love to see people try it
Mm-hmm.
and get more to themselves and feel good about it. It's wonderful to see people giving it a go and making a difference for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
As I say, I've put it in such a way, or I try to talk about it in such a way that it doesn't scare people. They're always hearing, oh, it takes hard work and work harder. No, most people work pretty hard. It's about working a little bit smarter, but you need someone to show you a bit of a guide, just a couple of tips here and there. Ah, yeah, okay, that's doable. That's easy. I can try that.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I've got to go with this stuff. It's because people make it too hard.
Yeah. And that's where a lot of people stop because it's hard. A lot of people aren't going to push through because they know it is. So why wouldn't they back out? And I feel like this book, these skills, this conversation is going to help people realize there is something you can do. And, you got to start it small and hope it takes off from there.
And you don't have to change your personality. You're not going to do that. I'm sure your personality is just great the way it is. I'm just suggesting figure out what trips you up in certain moments, figure out what to do next time, and then go back to your lovely self, right? It's just changing your behavior and your actions and your thoughts for a short period of time. It could be for a game or a presentation or an exam or a 5-minute interaction. You can do that.
Hmm.
You can do that. And then go back to the lovely you.
Yeah, completely. Because, like I said earlier, at the end of the day, you're left with yourself. So you better be happy with it, or at least try to get there. I wanted to ask you what a piece of advice you have for the younger generation out there.
Listen to yourself. Don't let everybody tell you what to do and how to do it all the time. Obviously, take good advice, take in good information, educate yourself. You're tougher than you think. you can do it. Listen to yourself. Give it a go.
Yeah. Like Nike, just do it. They're a big box corporation, but it's a good saying.
It is a good saying. Just do it your way. Don't worry so much
I
about
like that. I like that. That's the common theme we keep coming to, that this is completely individual and people are going to be affected differently and people are going to think things differently, so that they have to find their own way to be able to, work with the cards they're being dealt.
And I talk about 4 skills. You don't have to do all 4 skills. Pick one and try it. It'll make a difference. If you like to do 2 or 4, fine. Just do one.
Yeah.
You'll be pleased with yourself.
Yeah.
Who doesn't like that?
That's all we want, right? All right. I wanted to ask you, before we get to our, last bit of the day, I want to ask you who's someone from your network or that you've met in passing, that you'd like to nominate to potentially come and be a speaker on our show. Who is someone that you think um, has something useful to say that people are going to really relate to and try to incorporate in their own lives?
Well, I think perhaps a young athlete would be a great idea. I'd have to think about the one because I can't say names, but I think sort of a young striving athlete who's still going to school would be great.
um and what about having a young athlete who's going to school? What do you think they have to to offer and to say, and that would be useful?
Well, they would be able to give insight into how they handle the variety of pressures that they are going to be under, because trying to do school and another endeavor, whether it's music or, you know, business club or deal with a tough family, there's everybody has multiple pressures, no matter what your age. And I think a young athlete might have some good insight into how they are trying to navigate their own pressure moments.
Yeah. And I completely agree with that. Even just thinking back to all the things that would go through my head when I was young and competing and stuff. Obviously, I'm still super young, but like when I was an actual, child going to school, then right to dance, and then back home, do homework. There's so much going on, and like kids do a lot all the time, and there's constant information in and out. And how are they able to, keep going with, you know, all the struggles of being a kid?
Right. And that's why I want even kids to listen to themselves and learn how to manage themselves and not always feel like they need to be told what to do. I mean, what did you do when you were younger and trying to manage all these things? Can you remember or think of anything in terms of your pressure moments that may have helped?
Um, I've just always been really competitive, so I would always just put my most energy I could into anything, and if it doesn't turn out well, then it didn't turn out well. But when it did turn out well, I was very happy.
That's good for people to hear.
Completely. Um, I want to know, what are some final things that you think need to be, discussed, talked about, that we may not have gotten to earlier in our discussion.
Learn how to use your head. So many of us just carry on, go from thing to thing, and hope for the best. I don't think that's good enough. I think we should take charge of trying to be a little bit better in the tough moments.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think one has to sort of sit down, take an honest look at where I could be a little bit better. Oh, that really is an excuse. I better try to get by that.
Mm-hmm.
I think, learning to use your head is extremely important, and trying to let go of things having to be perfect.
Yeah.
The people don't try things because if it's not perfect, it's a fail.
Mm-hmm.
And I say trying to be perfect is a script for self-defeat.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to be perfect no matter who you are. So get off it. Let's go for being really good, or being good enough, or excellent.
Yeah.
I'm all up for that.
Yeah.
Gonna make mistakes. That's okay. We
Yeah.
gotta keep at it, but have the courage to try it.
Yeah.
It's hard to try to be good.
Um, and that's the negative connotation about the word perfect. It sets such an unrealistic standard that none of us, can really meet.
It's not possible.
Yeah, it's unattainable. And even if you think that you've reached as close to perfection as you can, your standards are going to raise. Now you have a new perfect that you have to reach. So, um, don't let the fear of that basically stop you from living your life, doing things, as best as you can. Because, like I said, at the end of the day, you got to live with yourself. You want to do whatever you can to, make sure that you're happy with what you're left with.
And if you're pretty good once, you can be pretty good again too.
Yeah.
Just have to be able to calm down a little so you can get to what you've got to do in the moment. Ship when
Completely.
you drift.
Yeah, I like that. Um, all right, so I know I've learned a lot today. I'm going definitely to apply some of these 4 steps, at least try to apply one. The breathing I could definitely do.
Good.
Um, and, this is a very, important conversation for me because I am often caught up in those emotions. And, sometimes I'll speak too fast and regret things I say when I know that I could just chill out sometimes. So, I've learned something today. I hope people in the audience have learned something today. Um, and I think this was an amazing conversation to have. And I'd love to, get that book and get the word out here about, how we can perform better when our heads are so caught in the crosshairs.
Excellent.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank you for coming to our show here today. And for everyone who was engaging in the crowd, thank you so much for your questions. I think they are completely useful in helping us, come to a better standard just as individuals. So thank everyone for that. Is there any final things you want to add, Dr. Dana?
No, I just think, please think about this, because it's a great way to protect your mental health and nourish your mental wellness by being calmer and performing like you think you can. It's a great way to go through things.
Heck yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I know I'm gonna be using it.
Good.
All right. Well, we hope to see you and interact with you later down the line, and we'll definitely promote your dialed in novel. I hope everyone gets a chance to check that out. We will post about it so you guys can, go look into it for yourself and see what merit you can pull out of it.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you so much. We'll catch you guys in the next Boundary Breakers episode. I look forward to seeing you then.